This is The Extra Mile.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Extra Mile. I'm Caleb Spear along with
G5.
DG5. Today we've got another guest with us, a fellow member at the Milwaukee Ave COC. He's a deacon as well, and he is repped, and his name is Phillip Bowman. How you doing, Phillip?
I'm good, thanks.
Thanks for coming on. What do you guys got, any big plans for Christmas or hanging out? Or
We are going to we're going to have a family Christmas. We'll probably go to Amarillo for a day or two where
Nice.
where Jennifer's parents live. And then after that, we're taking a trip to Las Vegas for a relative's wedding. So we'll be going there and doing that. So we'll have some fun. We'll come back like the 30th. So that's kind of our Christmas schedule. And I'm looking forward to that. So
that sounds fun.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Mhm.
It does. A lot of just you guys and the family, huh?
yes, us and the family. Yep. And then, so it's my cousin's son that's getting married. I'm close to her. Close to the cousin, so we should have a good time there.
Okay.
We got tickets to do some stuff, so should be a good week.
That sounds great.
Yep.
Now we're going to talk about why Christians should never go to Vegas. We're really confronting
It's all family activities.
Oh, man.
Philip's been a great guy and a good servant in the church, and he's had a lot to experience this year. He's going to be someone a valuable conversation
That's right.
from a biblical point of view, from someone who cares about the things of God, someone very passionate about adoption and things like abortion, standing up for the needy people of that case. You're someone who's fired up out there that encourages me to go out
Thank
and
you.
stand up for what is right.
Thank you.
That's right. And usually optimistic, too. And so that's...
Mostly.
Mostly.
I need that.
Mostly.
I'm very pessimistic. All right, George, what are we getting into?
So we're getting into, since it is around that time, the holiday season, kind of this idea of, well, we go into the holiday season usually pretty joyful for many families around America and the country, and it's a time of great, joy and family and friends, and we're around the fireplace and hot chocolate and presents, and people look forward to this time, and our spirits are lifted. But there is some out there that kind of get lost in the dust because they feel sad. They don't have the same feeling that many people during this time have. And there's several reasons to that, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but there's just some sadness, some depression, maybe grief, whatever we're feeling. Sometimes this time of the year can bring about not joy, it can bring about the opposite. It can bring about sorrow. And so we brought Phillip here to talk about how we can encourage those, if you are feeling that way this time of the year, to encourage you guys to feel better and a little more joyful. And what are some reasons in your experience, Phillip, that you've seen people get down during this time of the year?
Well, I mean, obviously, whatever your, relationships are, everybody wants to have somebody to be with,
True.
I remember when I was single, and you see the Hallmark movies and everybody's happy and they've got a boyfriend or girlfriend and they meet up at Christmas, and it's like that's the way you're supposed to be. Well, I'm not that way at that time, and so that's depressing. I think there's an image that you see on media, that this is like the most wonderful time of the year and you're supposed to be really happy. And if you're, just because greenery comes out, or your Christmas trees come out, or it's snowing or whatever, doesn't mean necessarily you're happy in your heart. And so it can be hard, I would think, for people like that. If your life isn't happy, where you're not going to be happy suddenly at Christmas just because it's Christmas,
Right.
If you're miserable 11 months out of the year, you're probably going to be miserable or unhappy that last month too. And so I just think if your life isn't, maybe if you've had expectations, you see other people around you that have things that have happened to them that seem better, then there would be, there can be some, melancholy, sadness, depression, all those things, and so I think that's what contributes a lot to it. Obviously, your situations around you, job, family loss, different things like that all can contribute to just a sadness overall, especially especially at Christmas, because you're supposed to be really happy and really up,
Right, yeah. It's pushed on you. It's shoved down your throat.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah.
you may just be lonely. And you're just kind of down.
Yeah.
I mean, there are several reasons. I've heard of stories where, maybe they see on the movies, Hallmark's is a great fantasy. They're
Yeah.
a good family, perfect family, but maybe they didn't have a great family.
Yeah. And that's not even their control.
Yeah, yeah, and that this time of the year just brings about more of that, or even the loss of someone, or a loss of a loved one, where we've had them all these Christmases, and now all of a sudden we don't, and that can bring about a real grief.
Yeah, my grandma lost one of her and this is a long time ago, like in 97, I think,
Oh,
98,
man.
about the time I was born.
I was 4.
Where she lost like an uncle, a grandparent, both her parents, and her husband in like 18 months.
It's awful.
And then my mom, because my mom lost her father at that same time, obviously, they talked extensively. And they, almost, as when I got older, they would bring up just casually during usually the holiday season of how hard the first holidays were. And even still as you learn and grow. I have no experience in this, but they said you learn and grow. But it's different because you talk about the hallmark with family time. And my mom always took comfort in Psalm 34:18. George wrote it down here. It's a starting place. It doesn't fix the feelings, but it's a starting place of knowing true reality that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Phillip, for those of you who know in Milwaukee Ave, Glenda passed away this year.
My mom.
That would be, thank you for clarifying that. That would be Philip's mother. She was, I would call, a matriarch of the Milwaukee Ave COC. Kendall, my wife, always loved sitting near her for singing, and she'd always encourage us and give me some constructive criticism up there in the pulpit.
That's good.
And
Sorry.
it was constructive. It was constructive. It was good. I always found that helpful because most people just tell you, "Hey, good job," and no one so she was always sweet, and so you have now this perspective on how you can now help us and the church and those out there who are struggling with these or want to help those in that scenario, because you have the point of view recently, whether we like it or not. Christmas and gifts kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So now how has that changed your perspective?
Yeah, so my
with your
mom
family?
passed away September 2nd, and it was pretty fast, too. So it wasn't really something like, we've been expecting this. She was in what I would say good to great health for her age up until probably a month before she got sick and passed away. So it was, it was just like a roller coaster. But I remember the whole time period when she was just getting worse and worse, and it was just really hard on obviously all of us. So the comfort that I try and take is that she's not suffering with that anymore. The comfort I try and take too is that she was, like you said, she was a Christian woman, and so I don't have any regrets of her life, or she should not have any regrets of her own life. And I know she's happy now in a much more peaceful place. And so that's the things I try and comfort with. It's definitely not going to be the same Christmas. We'd always go over to her house, and she always liked to see Alex, and she won't. And so that's hard for all of us in that aspect. But, the things that we try and take comfort in is the fact that, I feel like as Christians, we have that hope of, knowing where our loved ones can be if they've lived a good Christian life. I feel like if she's not, in heaven or a heaven waiting place, then no one can be. She was a perfect person, but, she lived an example that I would think
A godly woman.
of a godly woman.
Yeah.
And so that's, my thing that I would say to people is if they're dealing with like grief or loss, also I just try to really focus on, I don't like being sad, and I don't like being down, and I don't like being depressed. I mean, it's not a way that I want to be.
Right.
It's not, some people seem to enjoy it. I don't enjoy it, so I try not to be it. And it doesn't mean pushing your feelings away, but it does mean focusing on what's positive, and the things that are positive. And while I was 46 when she died, some people lose their parents at 32 or 22. I mean, I'd like it if I could have been 66, but I wasn't. So why focus on those things? You know, why focus on the negatives of what I'm missing out on or what my son's not having? Let's focus on the positives of what we have, especially at this, you know, at holiday time. So she wouldn't want us to be negative either. She wouldn't want me to be down. And so let's focus on the positives. And so my thing I would just say to people is, you know, it may be hard to find positives, but you can find them. You know, you can look for those positives. You have, you know, you have things in your life that you can find. If you have absolutely no positives that you can focus on in your life, then you might look at the way you're living your life, you know, because if you have no, you know, there's responsibility everybody takes for themselves.
Sure.
You know, you might be like, I'm just a victim of all these bad circumstances. And you may have had some bad circumstances, but you don't have to be a victim of them, you know, and you can be in control of the things that go on around you and the way you react and the way you act and the way you react to other people. Sometimes I'm a hard person to really reach out to other people. You know, sometimes I find I'm kind of, I mean, I can be friendly, but I'm really kind of closed off in a way, you know, a little bit private with my real feelings. You know, it's even hard for me, a little hard for me to come here and talk about things like this just because I want to be real private about it, you know. And I think, though, that when you really will reach out to people or talk to people in any type of situation, friendship, depression, socializing, you know, you can have so many more positives that come from that. And I try to be more open in that aspect and, you know, lean on people or deal with people. But I guess I would say if you're dealing with grief or loss, look for the positives that you can find. You know, there's got to be, you know, I mean, yes, there's overwhelming negatives if you've lost somebody, but you can also focus on the positive aspects, the positive you have. I have a wife. I have a son. I have good in-laws. I have good extended family. I actually spent more time after my mom died with my aunts and uncles that I haven't seen. My cousins I talked to a little bit more than I used to, that I didn't have a difference with, just hadn't really had touch with them. And so that's great. You know, I feel like those are some positive things. People love me. I'm not unloved just because my parents won't be here at Christmas. And so you just have to really kind of focus on those things. You can wallow in those negatives, and you'll have results from that. You'll have negative behavior, you'll have negative output, and you'll have negative interactions with other people.
How you think is how you're gonna walk.
Yeah, and I mean, I can be just as down as everybody else sometimes, you know. I mean, I can wallow around in it, but you have to say it's time, stop, and you just have to go on and focus on what is the positives, you know. You know, sometimes you'll talk to people, and the first story they tell you is, you know, well, I lost my mom, honey, this year, you know, and they want to talk about all the negatives. If you're always spouting the negatives, you're going to live in the negatives. And that's how I feel. Yeah. So.
I mean, that reminds me of King David. Is it when he just kind of snapped back? He mourned, but he knew that, okay, now's the time to make the choice.
I'm going to stop grieving for my lost son.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make the choice to move forward here.
Right? And David, even, you know, a lot of some of his bad situations were his own doings, too.
Right.
But, you know, he moved on past them and didn't, you know, he focused on what he had, the good aspects that he had.
God.
And I like that you brought out the positives from those that we've lost, too.
Yeah.
I mean, Glenda wouldn't want you to be sad and depressed and then move on. And I think sometimes we got to view it from their perspective. And eternity allows us to have that perspective, which is pretty neat. Yeah. Yeah. And
I think, and that's what I would also say is the importance of being a Christian. If you're not a Christian, you know, then death is very final. You know, that's the end, or it's the beginning of more trials. If you are a Christian, there's so much more that you have to live for. Right. And so, you know, she really reached her goal. You know, we feel like, oh well, she you know, but probably we're the euphoria or whatever she's experiencing now or is so much more better than what was here on earth. So, you know, really we're the ones grieving, not her. And so we just have to kind of look at it like that. Yeah. I feel like
there's an interesting paradox you're pointing out here where we have to, in a healthy way, deal with our grief. If we put it down. Probably unhealthy things will happen.
Suppress it.
Even Jesus himself, John 11:35, he wept. He had such feelings. There was acknowledgement of the pain and the trials of things that you said are lost. And then at the same time, there's a flip and hope in the gospel and restoration that Jesus brings that we have of, well, something's coming in the future. We had this conversation briefly with Eric.
Yep.
And where he talked about the loss of his daughter and how he had the hope, the factual realization of Scripture of we'll be together forever in the Lord. And the same realization of there's a lesson here that God wants me to have. And, these are the answers that we sometimes want and don't get. Like, I'm always amazed that Job, who had way harder lives, I would say, than at least mine, and Job was never sat down by God and was told, "Oh, Job, you lost everything because Satan came to me and he wanted to change." Job, as far as I can tell in the story, never even knew that. And that's incredible to me. Mm-hmm. We started with, my mind's bouncing around, we've bounced around this with the holiday season. So, George, you were saying the holidays sometimes with our great commercial infrastructure wants us to fill these voids with material things.
Yeah, well, every commercial we see are, just families often, or people with other people, happy, always happy, and they have something. They've bought something. Something has made them happy.
Yeah, with
Whether
Christmas.
it be fried chicken or that ring or what.
Yeah, with presents, sometimes, like, in what ways do the material things, I'm talking specifically like gifts and meals, things like that, in what ways can those be good, actually, in the Christmas season, even for those who are grieving? And also, what ways do you find those to be unhelpful and can be actually detrimental to the Christian life?
Well, I think that if you take the time to, do something for somebody, anything that you do for somebody, and we decide we're going to do that at Christmas time, even just a plant or, rake their leaves or, a gift that you made at home. It doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah.
If you take the time to do that for somebody, that means a lot. You can, and sometimes we just wait till Christmas time to do that. But, if we look for opportunities to do things like that, at work, we're doing like a Secret Santa thing, and the gifts don't have to be that expensive. In my son's Boy Scouts, they're doing like a $10 gift for everybody. It doesn't have to be that much, but just taking the time to do something for somebody else, and that it's like, well, you thought about me. I didn't even really know you cared about me or thought about me, but you thought about me. And that's nice. But I think and also to say this, I was thinking. So I've worked in sales for 20 years since Jennifer and I've been married, and sometimes we've been broke, and sometimes we've had a lot of money, and so sometimes it's at Christmas time, and so it's like, you've been up, you've been down, and so you just really have to not go with the quantity of the gift or the dollar amount of what you're doing, but just the quality of what you're offering, and if you're, if the person you're giving to expects some, a certain dollar amount or certain extravagance, then you're giving to the wrong person. That's what I think. So, it's really just what you're able to do. And I think that, that brings happiness. I suppose the other side of it is, like I said, if you've been down where you don't have the money,
right.
It's like literally the facts are monetary. I don't have the money to buy what I want to buy for people. Then, that can be very depressing, and that can be very sad to people. That can be a hard thing. My thought always is, why are you in that situation? What brought you to that situation?
Yeah.
I always look at like what brought you here. Are you working a position that you love, but you doesn't pay well? That's one thing. Are you not reliable at your job? I mean, I'm just saying, how are you in this situation? And if you're pleased with your situation, that's wonderful. You shouldn't let the monetary aspects get you down. It should be something you give to people from your heart.
Right.
If you're unpleased with your situation, then look around and see what you can do to change it. And I'm not talking about like just making more money, but if you're depressed because of you can't do for people like you want to do, then look around and see why is that the situation.
Yeah. Or what you can do.
What can I do?
Yeah.
What can I do to make it better? Maybe I'm a college student right now, and I'm not, it's
just
the way
budget.
that it
There's
is.
nothing.
So I'd like to do more. So what can I do? And if the people you're giving to expect more quality over or quantity over quality, then that's the wrong people to be giving to.
Yeah.
So I would just say that, just doing for other people, doing something is a good thing. It doesn't have to be the dollar amount of it all. If that depresses you, then examine it. Why is it depressing you? What could you do to change it? Is this changeable? Does it matter? If the person you're giving to is depressed about it, examine that person.
Right.
Maybe I've raised my son wrong.
Right.
Maybe we need to talk about what the real importance is of giving gifts or things like that.
Well, and our culture's expectations are really high. When everyone has the nicest iPhone.
Well, I mean, with the commercial is
Right.
he buys her a Lexus, she buys him a Lexus, and they
right.
wrap it, and they're
I
25 years old. Okay, what? I mean,
I hate car commercials.
oh
I
my
do too.
goodness, yeah.
Car commercials are my least
And
favorite.
then they get a puppy too, like
That's
a
right,
purebred
yeah.
puppy
And- yes,
on top of that.
right
Yeah,
in the shotgun.
and they go back in their mansion. Please. So yeah, I mean that's
That's happiness.
very, and they're happy too.
And they're
Have you
happy,
guys
yeah.
seen the
And they have a bunch of hair.
a bunch of hair? Have you guys seen the kids? I mean, you guys have seen Veggie Tales.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Have you
yeah.
seen the specific one with Madame Blueberry and Stuff Mart? Have you
I
guys
think
seen
I
that?
have.
I
I'm sure
feel like
have.
that lesson would go over half of America's head. She has so much stuff, like her treehouse gets crushed, and she sees this poor family who's happy, and she's just like mind blowing. I'm like, America needs to see this VeggieTales episode. It's commercialism and Stuff Mart.
Yeah, well, and I think that when you examine people that I mean, you see people that are very materialistic, and they
Yeah.
become very materialistic with a lot of their things at Christmas time. But, that's not lasting happiness. That's not true happiness. The true happiness if we're specifically talking about the holiday time, is being together, thinking of somebody thinking of what that other person might benefit from, but it doesn't have to be something expensive that they can benefit from. Anything that they could benefit from that you care to give them, that's what really matters.
The thought, yeah.
Yeah, and I've gotten gifts from my son that didn't cost anything, but they were the best,
Right.
and so that's really what matters. Or gifts that he determined that I wanted. No idea I wanted.
It was the thought.
But it was the
Yeah.
thought, and that was the best thing, The older he's gotten these really high budgets. Like, Jennifer has to go, no, 2,000's too much to spend. I mean, whatever. But, it's really what the thought is, the intent is. And so I think that if you can remember that in your heart, and I think if the people you're giving to remember that too, then that's really the key to it all. And
Yeah, it's the thinking.
Yeah.
I think of you every day because you are in my office. I have a nice picture of
am
you.
I
yeah.
a Samson or which one?
No, the one with the old school picture from Lance with your hair, with you and Jennifer. You're probably like my age. in
Yeah,
that picture.
it's in his office,
So
and
you're
it's
on
been there
top.
all year.
You've been sitting there for.
That's from a white elephant gift, right?
Yes, and I have to come up with a way to deliver it here. But
We'll put a copy of that photo in the corner there.
That
Yeah.
was when I was young and gorgeous.
the luscious hair makes you think of it. Well, and Christmas time always gifts, and in the world, people are also thinking about the coming of Christ. It's a time the world thinks about Jesus coming into the world as just an infant. Interesting and strange theological thought, but it's a good time of year maybe to use that. But what are some of the ways we can find, maybe that would be one of them, joy with our family, with all this going around us, but putting that aside, how can we find joy in the midst of our trials, even when it's a time where it doesn't feel natural while the rest of the world's celebrating?
Yeah. Well, I've always thought that as far as the biblical part of it or the religious part of it, I don't really think it has a place in our, if we have
it's not Sunday morning
or
worship, yeah.
happy birthday baby Jesus worship service. I just don't.
Yeah, we're not saying that.
And then the reason we're saying that is because we don't see biblical, anything that backs that up biblically.
Right.
It's not in the Bible. It says Jesus was born on Christmas Day. However, I do think that if it causes the world to think more about Jesus and maybe change their, if it makes them more inclined to attend a worship service or to feel more closer to God and maybe pick up a Bible and spend more time with the Bible,
Right.
then I think there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not going to dissuade anybody from doing that.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that, for us, my family, and, we've always celebrated as just a fun time, a holiday time.
Right.
Not necessarily a religious time. So I think that, finding, you can still find joy in your family, in your relationships, in the things that you do. While if other people want to celebrate it in that fashion, I'm not going to debate them about it. I'm not going to argue with them about it. I feel like, that if it draws them a little bit closer to God, or at that time, maybe that will carry over into January and February. The thing I always say to people is if you feel compelled to go to church on Easter, or you feel compelled to go to church on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or around it, then you should feel compelled to go the whole year round. Or when I say church, a worship service. If you feel compelled on those days, why don't you feel compelled every Sunday? And so that would be what I would say to someone. Why just these special, holidays or around Thanksgiving? Why not all the time?
Yeah, George, Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Thanksgiving.
Do you?
Oh yeah, I do.
So to me, I feel
And my
like,
birthday.
we can actually even use it as our own time to draw people, use it. Well, if they're having an interest in biblical things at that moment, it's maybe even a discussion point to say, well, why? Let's continue on to discuss it through January and February and March and April. Why can't you keep the same feeling here that you're keeping? And sometimes it's a fake euphoria that the media creates. Once again, we're all prey to the media and the commercials and everything we see, that we're supposed to feel this way, and it's supposed to be like a religious, pinnacle moment or whatever, and so I feel like, but if you can feel this way now, feel it through the whole year. Also, too, I feel like if you feel really close to your family at these times, try and feel this way all the time. If your relationship with your kids or your parents or your spouse feels so much warmer at this time, well, why don't you try and feel this way all the time, all the time, all through the year, whatever you're doing now, why don't you keep doing it?
Right.
If everything feels more special, then why not keep doing it? So.
Euphoria is a good word, because when you were talking about struggling with a sadness during the holiday season, seeing all this joy, many people have the shallow joy of, like you said, with their family or maybe their religion or the stuff of Christmas time. And then January rolls around and they're sadly back to the sad state or whatever state they were before.
Yeah.
If it's a kicking point, like you said, that could be great. But this has to go much, much further. So let's start applying this, actually. Maybe give a little application point here.
Yeah, sure. Christmas, our culture does happen to make Christmas just the only time to be religious, like you were saying. Sometimes, and you're making the point that not just on Christmas, but make sure to take that, and if it does feel some sort of change, you take it throughout the entire year. And this is a great time to think about Jesus, and because the culture's thinking about it, everyone else is thinking about it, and to evangelize and mission. And I think when we watch the commercials, when we're together with family, I wrote this verse down as Romans 12:15. I think this is really the goal of really the holiday spirit, isn't it just to be, not just be happy for happiness sake, but to be, as it says here, rejoice with those who rejoice, right? To weep with those who weep, and to live in harmony with one another.
There's in 1 Corinthians 12, when it's talking about the body of the church, in verse 26 there, it says, if one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. This is the beauty of the church all the time,
right?
When we're together. And so you, in this experience in this past year, how do you think we can help others, particularly in the church, who might be feeling kind of down this time of year? How can the church rally around one another in our struggles?
Well, I think the first thing is you just have to look beyond all the things that are going on with yourself. We always want to just
sometimes hard
wallow in all the things that are going on with ourselves, and not it's like they say, when you're having surgery, it's minor. When I'm having surgery, it's major. So it's like my problems are major, yours are just okay.
Yeah,
it's
not
minor. That big a deal. And I've always found myself rationalizing, like something will happen to so and so. It's like, oh well, but they have blah blah blah, so it's not that bad. Blah blah blah. In my head, and you just have to really. I think one of the things that I'm very bad about is, what may be a problem to one is empathizing. I'm not very good at empathizing at times. I'm trying to be better. But, someone will be sad that their great aunt's sister's wife passed away. And I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but it's sad to them. That's a difficult situation to them at that time. And, they might be like a younger person and they haven't really experienced more loss, like grandparents or parents or, even as we get older, maybe a spouse or a child, even though you don't want to say that, it happens.
Right.
So you're kind of like, sometimes I'm not very good at empathizing with people in their situation. But I think if we empathize and have compassion on people, whatever situation, if it's a big situation to them, then it's a big situation, And so what I'm trying to say is look around, look around for the people that are hurting, look around for the people that are having difficulties and reach out to them, Back to when my mom passed away, I heard from people and cards and flowers that I hadn't talked to in 30 years, like growing up.
Oh, wow.
I grew up in Corpus Christi for a few years. My dad preached there when I was like 2 to 6 years old. And I got cards from people then tell me about their experience with my mom and my dad. So, it meant a lot. They took that time to find me and send me something. I got flowers from some relatives I hadn't seen in forever. So just sometimes we're like, oh, they don't care to hear from me or they don't care. It really does mean a lot. So not just when someone dies, but just a card, a text, a phone call. Sometimes I find myself, oh, I meant to do this for so-and-so and I didn't do it. I didn't meant to text them and tell them I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And I don't do it. We'll just do it. Be aware of the things that are troubling other people. Be more outward aware instead of self-aware or self-aware of others and reach out to them. And that's what I would say in this, like a Christmas time. We can tell the people that are struggling based on, their, you can guess the people that are struggling based on personal situations.
Sure.
Sometimes though, you can't guess the people that are struggling, because you can't really tell it. You wouldn't have guessed it. And so I guess, being warm or warmth to everybody, kindness to everybody, just, that you can encounter. You never know what situations everybody's dealing with, and so I just say looking outward instead of inward. And also when you're not worried about your own problems or thinking about your own situations, but everybody else's, it's a lot easier to deal with your own, because you can commiserate together, or you're not thinking about your problems, you're thinking about someone else's and how you can help them feel better.
So it may not just be just giving a physical gift to everyone, because we can't do that, but it may just be a gift as in meeting people like where they're at in their life, having empathy.
So if you think about somebody that may be alone at Christmas time, maybe they don't have any relatives at Christmas time. Maybe they can't go home for Christmas. Maybe they lost a spouse recently, or maybe they're suffering, just talk to them, ask them if they want to come over, do something with them, or, they may say, oh, I'm fine, I'm doing blah, blah, but, it just reach out to them. Even something minor, like, so for our care group at church, we're going to take some poinsettias to some widows, and every year we do that, and they just love that. Not really, anything too expensive or anything like that, but it's just a nice thought to help cheer them up for that time period, and so also to carry that over for the whole year, why not do that all the time? We do it at Christmas and then it's like January, whatever, but
that's so true.
Yeah, it is true. Carried over all the time. But I love December because my birthday's in December too. So I love December.
Double gifts.
It's Monday.
Oh, hear that, guys?
I take Cash App. No.
that would be playing the future. That would be today. All right.
Oh that would be today.
It's beginning birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
It's beginning my birthday weekend week into the Monday week. Yes, thank you.
Hey, all of this is why the Lord said it's better to give than to receive.
Right.
Well, you definitely feel, if you can fill someone's need or make them feel better, just once again, like I'm just thinking about like the 2 times, like my parents passed away, each time people were just unbelievably generous. You're just like, I can't even believe the things people did or brought to me, or the food I got, or the things that reached out. And I will say also, though, if you're a Christian, you're attending a service or a worship group or a church group, and they don't care to reach out, you need to look around and see where else you might need to be, because We have a wonderful group at Milwaukee. I'll plug Milwaukee. We have a wonderful group. Everybody reaches out and they're very interested.
Yeah.
But not every situation is that good.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that it's part of it's a part of a great group, a great culture.
Right. The greatest of these is love.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, but it's not always in our forefront sometimes. And so I just say, like, at Christmas, look for what you can do for others. Not a fix on your own situation or your own problem.
Well, Jesus came in the world to be a light and to serve and help others, and
And he gave all.
Well, and it's,
that's what we should be doing.
definitely. And it says, no need to, Jesus will take care of us. Don't worry about the problems of tomorrow. They'll take care of themselves, And so I feel like, if we're worried about our own self and our own issues, it doesn't change anything, it doesn't create any new or take away any problems. So I just feel that, if you're helping with others, and it's really something I need to work on. I'm not saying I'm the pro at that. It's easy to say it instead of do it, because you become very busy with your own day-to-day aspects, your job, your this or that. And if you can reach out to others and try and just, a text or a call or whatever, really can mean a lot. There's no one's going to say, "Oh, I wish I wouldn't have heard from him." If you're going through like a trial, you're probably just not going to say, "I wish I hadn't heard from this person." I can't even imagine. If you say that, then it's your own fault if nobody contacts you. Honestly, so.
Well, I found
really
this to
good.
be very helpful. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys as well. We love and miss Glinda, but
Thank you.
as Scripture says, Paul said, "I don't want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others do, who have no hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so through Jesus God will bring with him those who've fallen asleep." There'll be great reunion and restoration altogether because of what Christ has done. Thank you for sharing all this with us and encouraging me and George. I know for you listeners as well.
That's right. Remember, God is love, and go so.